everyone. Thank you for joining and welcome to today's event, Water Apartheid in the West Bank, Parched for Justice in the Occupied Palestinian Territories with the Green Olive Collective and Dr. Abdel Rahman Tamimi. My name is Ebus Bleicher and I'm the Advocacy and Membership Director of the Green Olive Collective, an advocacy, human rights, and tour guiding center committed to a democratic future, the end of the ongoing Nakba, and the Palestinian right of return. We provide communities around the world with insight into the apartheid policies of the occupation and the resources to engage in meaningful advocacy in direct solidarity with Palestinians. Your contributions for today's event will support all of our urgent work to challenge ongoing policies of displacement, forced transfer, and military occupation in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. We need contributions from you, our wider community around the world, in order to sustain grassroots initiatives with Palestinian communities on the ground, including the replanting of olive trees after arson attacks by settlers, rebuilding homes after demolitions, rehabilitating honeybee farms, and cultivating land threatened with expropriation. Please contribute at sowingsolidarity.com, which I just put into the chat moments ago. We are very honored today to be joined by Dr. Abdel Rahman Tamimi, a leading expert on water rights and resource management in Palestine, to together discuss how water policy in the West Bank functions as a tool of control and territorial annexation. We will explore how access to water and its denial have been used to entrench apartheid between Palestinian communities and settlements. We will discuss the legal and administrative frameworks governing water allocation, the disparities in infrastructure and access between Palestinian and Israeli communities, and how water restrictions intersect with broader policies of land confiscation, displacement, and demographic change. Drawing on decades of research and on-the-ground work, Dr. Tamimi will help us situate water policy within the wider context of occupation, examining how control over this, of course, essential resource shapes daily life, agricultural sustainability, and the long-term viability of Palestinian communities in Area C and throughout the region. Dr. Tamimi is the general director of the Palestinian Hydrology Group, a leading body in the Palestinian water and environmental sectors, delivering innovative and climate adaptive solutions to thousands of households while advocating for equitable water access and environmental health for all Palestinians. With that, sincere thanks again, Dr. Tamimi, for joining us, especially with everything happening. And I'll pass it to you to introduce yourself further and, of course, to share with us more about your critical work and the current reality on the ground. You should be able to.
Yes, thank you, Erez, and it's a great pleasure for me to be with you this evening. Maybe some of you is still day, not evening. Actually, my presentation will be part of it technical and part of it political, because unfortunately, water in the Middle East, it's not only a combination of oxygen and hydrogen. It's with capital B, it's political oxygen and hydrogen combination. Just to have very quick historic background about water problem, and this is not started in 1967 when the Israelis occupied the Palestinian territories, but also started since 1930s when the first Zionist group came to the north of Palestine, and they started the first so-called kibbutz, and water was in the center of the Israeli policy, the Israelis' policies since that days. And that time was the Jewish community, but we have no problem with the Jewish community, but the problem started to be problem after the occupation of the Palestinian territories in 1967. Can we share the slides? Yes, the problem is it has the problem of water in the whole Middle East, and in particular in Palestine and Israel. Unfortunately, we are living under very severe climate change and water shortage, but limited water resources. But unfortunately, we have unlimited military orders from Israeli government to regulate and to control the Palestinian water. Uh, till now, even after the establishment of the Palestinian Authority based on the Oslo Accord, till now, water is under Israeli military control because water is one of the issues delayed to the so-called final status negotiations, like Jerusalem, water settlements, borders, arms control, and refugees. And water is still controlled by military officers in Israeli Ministry of Defense. And this is the only place in the world water managed, controlled, and regulated by military orders, not by technical arrangement. Uh, Water is political issue, as I said, because controlled, managed, operated by military officers and by military orders. Also, it is technical issue because we have limited water resources, but these resources also unjust distributed between Palestinians and Israelis. Before starting my real presentation, I want to assure one thing from my point of view as a peace promoter and as a water politician. Water is a basic human right for everyone, for Palestinians, for Jews, for Muslims, for Christians, for Palestinians, for Arabs, for Jews, for Israelis, whoever on the earth has the right to drink clean water. This is my major principle. However, what's going on the ground in Palestine, this principle is not respected by Israeli military control. I will ask you to change the slides to go to the second slide. Yes, as you see, this is one of the photos. If you come to Palestine, and if some of you came to Palestine, will see the black forest. I call it black forest. Hundreds of thousands of plastic reservoirs, plastic storage tanks, as you see on the Palestinian houses. Why that? And you cannot see that in Israeli houses in settlements in the West Bank, because the Palestinians, 35% of the Palestinian population, they receive less than 1 day a week water. The water only running 1 day a week. That's why they store water for the rest of the week. And around 26% of the Palestinians, they have running water once every 2 weeks. In other words, none of the Palestinian houses, they have running water 24 hours, 7 days a week. All of them, they have limited hours, maximum 2 days a week running water. While the Israeli settlers in West Bank, I don't care what's going on in Israel, but in West Bank, the Israeli colonies and the settlers, they have 24 hours, 7 days a week running water, while we share the same resources. And next slide, please. The Israeli, of course, confiscated the land and water by military order. The military order 92, number 92 and 93, this military order issued 6 days after the occupation of the West Bank in 1967, and they put limited quota to the Palestinians, and nowadays 80% of available water resources controlled by Israelis military government, and 20% controlled by Palestinians, despite the fact that the Palestinians since 1967 till now, our population almost tripled. That's why, but the same amount of water is allocated to us. Also, the Israelis, they don't recognize the Palestinians' water right as a basic human right. To have, as I said earlier, to have drinking water, it's your basic human right, regardless the political argument who's on the water. If you are in prison, or you are in school, or you are in hospital, or you are in house, you have the right to drink clean enough, affordable water. Next slide, please. Also, the Israelis, they control the Jordan River. The Palestinians, they are, according to the international law and the international water law, the Palestinians, they are Riberian and of the Jordan River, Riberian country, and they have the right to enjoy and to use the Jordan River. And in 1953 was a dispute between Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Israel in 1953. And in that time, the president of United States in that time, if I'm not wrong, was Eisenhower. And Eisenhower sent a missioner to the Middle East to solve the water problem and dispute between the countries. And in that time, West Bank was part of Jordan. And according to Eric Johnston, who is the missioner from United States, allocated 250 million cubic meter as Palestinian quota from the Jordan River. Unfortunately, nowadays we receive zero from the Jordan River, while Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Israel are enjoying the water from the Jordan River. And the Palestinians, not only they don't use the water of the Jordan River for agriculture as they used to before the 1967, but even we don't have the right to go and to see the water, because along the river, it's considered by Israeli military forces, it's a military area, and the Palestinians, they cannot go and enjoy just to see the river. Also, in West Bank, we have groundwater aquifers. We call it the mountain aquifer. And in the mountain aquifer, as I said earlier, the Israelis, they use 80% of the aquifer, and the Palestinians, they use 20%, while according to the international water laws and the international human rights laws and international water laws, all these things giving the Palestinian the right to use 80% of the national water of Palestine. Also, Gaza Strip, in Gaza, the coastal aquifer, unfortunately, the water it flows from Israel to the Gaza, and according to the international law, the Israelis, they don't have the right to cut that water and to ban water. Unfortunately, the Israelis, they did groundwater dams, and they catch the water before entering the Gaza Strip. And I will explain later why they do that. Next slide, please. If I don't want to go one by one, but since 1954 till now, the Israelis, they put a lot of plans, and they implemented several plans to control the whole water in the area. They did so-called national water carrier to transfer 70% of the Jordan River to inside Israel until from the north of Israel till the desert of Negev. They call it the desert of Negev, and that to irrigate palm trees and to have agriculture. And of course, this canal or national carrier doesn't pass the Palestinian territories, and the Palestinians they don't benefit from any drop of water from that canal. And also the Israelis in 1964 they developed that canal, what they call it national water carrier, and nowadays actually 85% of the Jordan River flow with inside this canal to use it for drinking and for agriculture, and the Palestinians they don't use it. The Israelis in 1967 controlled the whole West Bank groundwater, and in 1982 also the Israelis they give a mandate to Israeli national water company called Mekorot to manage, operate, and distribute the water in West Bank. Now the military government of Israel in West Bank they regulate the water management in West Bank, but the operation mandated to Israel Water Company called Mekorot, not the Palestinian company. Next slide. In 1995, when the Palestinians signed Oslo agreement with the Israelis, as you know, Israelis delayed the final status of water issues to the final negotiations, and the final negotiation should finish within 5 years. Unfortunately, till now the final status negotiation didn't start, and still the Palestinian they are unable to control their water resources, while their demand for water almost doubled because the population growth increased. Our population doubled, but the quota allocated in Oslo agreement didn't increase. That's why our quota, almost 50% of the quota allocated in Oslo agreement. In 2000 years, the Israelis started to do apartheid wall, and in my opinion, wall is constructed only because they want to control the groundwater of Palestinians, because the mountain areas in West Bank, underground water flows from groundwater from mountain areas to inside Israel, and the Israelis they put the wall. By the wall, they controlled around 100 groundwater well used to be resources to the Palestinian agriculture, and now under Israeli control, and the Palestinians they cannot use these wells, and prohibiting Palestinians to use that wells. The irrigated agriculture in Kalkilia, Tul Karim, and Jenin area is all the Palestinian irrigated agriculture almost diminished, and zero agriculture because no water available, and the Palestinian people who used to be farmers in their lands became agricultural workers in Israeli kibbutzim because they no more doing agriculture. Since 2002 till now, Israelis they use water as a punishment tool on Palestinians. If one village has any activity against the Israeli army, or they did demonstration, or they are demonstrate against the Israeli occupation, the Israelis they control the water and they cut the water for 1 month, 2 months, and this is occasionally happening in many villages in Palestine. And other words, the Israelis, they use water as punishment tool. Next slide. I don't want to go one by one, but as just statistically, nowadays the Israelis who are living in West Bank, the average consumption is around 400 cubic meter per capita a year for Israelis who are in West Bank, and the Palestinians, they are 120 cubic meter per capita a year, which means the Israelis, they use 4 times than the Palestinians. But the strangest thing is we pay 3 times more than the Israelis. The same resources, the same water resource, but we pay 3 times more than the Israelis. If we take into consideration the average income of Israelis, which is around $30,000 per year, and the income of Palestinians, which is around $4,000 per year for Palestinians, it is too expensive. And if the Palestinians drink whiskey, more cheaper for them. Next slide. As I said, the Mekorot, the Israeli water company, is manage all water resources in Palestine. And since 1995, when the Palestinian Authority became the authority, actually the Palestinian Authority is camouflage. It is authority without any authority. It is really like a buffer zone between Palestinians and Israelis, because they cannot control anything. Only the Palestinians, they collecting bills and invoices, and they repay to Israelis. And Mekorot is controlling the water resources, and the Palestinians control the pipes and collecting the bills. And this is like a subcontractor to the Israeli water company, Mekorot. Next. Israeli water company Mekorot is not only a water company; it is also regulate who can be connected to water. Israelis also, they use the company actually use water as punishment tool. All military orders implemented by Mekorot, military orders regarding water control, controlled and managed by Mekorot. And Mekorot has long history as part of a confiscation tool for water and land. And we can see it in West Bank. The Mekorot is one of the tools of the military government to manage the Palestinian water. And it is, as I mentioned earlier, controlled by military orders, not by let me say, technical regulations. Next, please. Also, Mekorot is providing the settlers water, and this is illegal because the whole international community consider the Israeli settlements are illegal. The UN, international community, international governments, and the Mekorot is, even before building the settlements, providing them water, which means Mekorot is one of the tools encouraging the expansion of the settlements in West Bank. Next. By the way, all the water I'm talking about is Palestinian water, but managed, controlled by Israeli military orders and by Mekorot. The situation in West Bank is really a disaster. As I said, for example, I'm living in a village and we're receiving water once a week. That's why if you see the Palestinian houses and the roofs, it's I call it black forest, because full with the black storage tanks. And if you go to the settlement, this black forest does not exist because they have 24 hours running water. Next. You see this dots. It's the Israeli groundwater wells are surrounding West Bank, and here surrounding Gaza Strip. What I'm calling the Israeli water wells milking our mountains, because they withdraw the water from Palestinian mountains, and they prohibit Palestinians to drill wells in this area. And this is the green line. The Israelis, they put their wells inside Israel, but close to the green line and to the close to the mountain areas. And because overpumping all Palestinian water underground, moving to the Israeli side. In Gaza, they do the opposite. They trap water before entering Gaza Strip. Yeah, in West Bank, they allowed Palestinian water to flow towards to Mediterranean, and they catch it before entering the Mediterranean. And in Gaza, they do the opposite thing. They catch the water before entering Gaza Strip, and this is clear. It's apartheid water system. Next. In Gaza, actually, the situation, especially after the war in Gaza, first of all, let me clarify my position. I'm against the Hamas aggression to Israelis, and I'm against Hamas action against the Israeli civilians. But does not mean, and this is not justify the large aggression of Israelis on Gaza people and killing around 75,000 people and around 300 people injured, because the Israeli reaction was unjustified. However, in Gaza, the situation before the war, before the last war, the only 10% of Gaza water is suitable for drinking water, and the WHO standards shows that 95% of Gaza water is not suitable for human consumption. And this is the report before the war. After the war, the people of Gaza, I don't have a lot of time. I can show you how much the waterborne disease spread out in Gaza Strip. Water in Gaza is became the main problem, and maybe the biggest problem, because the only solution of the lack of water in Gaza is water. You cannot replace it. Water is the only solution. That's why the people, they are drinking water, polluted water, full with waterborne disease. And in my opinion, this is unacceptable. And none of Gaza people, they have running water. They use jugs and barrels and the tractors to transfer water from one side to another side. Next slide. The Israelis, of course, they control the water flows to Gaza Strip, and they used before the war to give Gaza 10 million cubic meter a year, and nowadays the water is not running from Israeli to Gaza, and as I said, Gaza relies on polluted, unsuitable water for human consumption. Please, next slide, and next slides. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Because next slide. Next, yeah. You see, this is the nitrate. This line is the line with the international standard of nitrate to be permitted water for drinking. And as you see, all groundwater wells in Gaza is above this line, which means all Gaza wells are polluted and not unsuitable for drinking. And this is, of course, the nitrate. It is according to the WHO standards, 50 milligram per liter, while some people in Gaza they are drinking 200 milligram per liter, which is 4 times more than the permitted, let me say, level, and that's why most of the people they have waterborne disease. Next slide. This is the waterborne disease spread out in Gaza because the pollution of water. This is actually cholera is the highest one, and polio is the last one, but it's different from area to area. For example, in the south, cholera is more spread out. In the middle, polio is more. It depends the quality of water. Next slide. Conclusion: waterborne disease in the Gaza Strip is the main problem now for international organizations, WHO, UN organization. They want to use the actually all measures, which is difficult, to provide the people with desalinated water. But of course, because the lack of energy and because the origin of water, groundwater, are polluted, the desalination of water is very high cost, and also one of the main problem is there is no energy source. Next slide, please. Also, there is a huge public health problems because also solid waste. There is no dumping places, and all the solid waste spread out in the camps, the displaced people camps, and of course, because the solid waste, there is a huge diseases spread out among the normal citizens, and this is the second problem after the water is the solid waste. I think the multi-sectoral collaborative efforts from UN agencies, from Palestinian organization, they try to minimize the damage, not to solve the problem, because the problem is bigger than their capacities and their limited resources. I want to conclude with the three sentences. The first one: the Israelis, they don't respect the water as a basic human right and should not use water as a weapon against Gaza people. The second thing, if the Palestinians became thirsty, this is not good for Israelis, not for Palestinians only, because will be a bad environment for promotion peace. If I am thirsty and my neighbor has a swimming pool, it's not a healthy atmosphere to do cooperation or to do good neighboring actually with Israelis. The third thing is I don't call for cut water on the Israeli settlement. Settlement is a big problem, but the settlers, they have the right to drink water as a human being, but also we have to recognize the same right to the Palestinians. This is what I tried to say, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. There's so much there that's so rich and so important for us to make sense of and understand. And I think the final note you made, that fundamentally this is a political problem, not a problem of policy or
Yes.
administration, is the most important. And I think a very powerful note for you to have concluded on. We want to hear more of your thoughts on that matter. But before we turn to some questions, both from myself and from others here, I wanted to ask if you would be willing to share a little bit more also about yourself and how did you come to be in the field of water management and to deal with issues of water policy and discrimination in the West Bank.
Yes.
Curious to hear more
Actually,
about your own journey in relationship.
yeah, yeah, very briefly. Actually, I did my master degree in geological engineering in Turkey. I graduated from Turkey, and after I came back to Palestine from, by the way, I got scholarship actually from Turkish government to study there, and I studied geological engineering. And when I came back to Palestine, I realized the main problem is facing Palestinians is shortage of water and misdistribution of water among Palestinians and Israelis. Then I decided to do hydropolitics, not water engineering, and to promote the idea of water is a basic human right. This is my principle, and every human being, wherever, whenever, has the right to drink water. And also, I went to England. I did my PhD in water politics, and also I did master degree in international relations. And my actually, I used my academic career to promote water is a basic human right, and to promote water is the right for everyone, and also to protect the Palestinian national rights, because we don't claim water in Israel is a Palestinian water. That's why at the same time we are protecting the Palestinian water for the future development of Palestine.
Thank you, and thanks to you and all your peers and colleagues for the important work you do. I'll open it up shortly to everyone attending here and who has joined today to ask questions or share thoughts. But before that, I guess I just wanted to focus on one fundamental aspect that you've pointed out, which is that water in the West Bank is governed by a military. And even if people understand it intellectually, I think it's very hard for those of us around the world who have not experienced the reality of military rule to really understand and internalize what it means that a military is controlling water. And of course, a military will control water in alignment with military directives. So I
Yes.
guess I wanted to ask if you have any more thoughts to share about why,
Yes.
what are the aims and strategies of the military? What are their goals as part of the larger project of occupation that exists?
In West Bank, the Israeli occupation, military occupation, is managed by Ministry of Defense in Israel, and part of Ministry of Defense, they call it civil administration. Civil administration is part of the Ministry of Defense to manage West Bank, and part of the Ministry of the civil administration, they have a military officer who is managing water file in even his office in the military headquarters in Ramallah area. And unfortunate, because the Israelis, they consider water as part of military issues. Water is one of the final status negotiations according to the Oslo Agreement, which supposed to be finished in 1999. Unfortunately, till now, the Israelis, they don't want to negotiate about the final status issues, which is water, Jerusalem, borders, arms control, and settlements. The Israelis, they do the opposite. They announce weeks ago announced that so-called Area C is pure under Israeli control, while according to the Oslo Agreement is the area where in dispute is not finalized yet. But the Israeli new government, they try to finalize the final status of the issues, the issues I mentioned, settlements, water, and others. They would try to finalize it before the negotiations, and they want to annex Area C. You are familiar with ABC areas. A is totally controlled by Palestinians, which is 4%. B is controlled by Israelis from military point of view, and Palestinians from civil affairs, and this is around 20%. And the rest is Area C, totally controlled. Civil affairs and military affairs by Israelis. 64% are actually controlled by Israelis. And the only advantage of ABC classification is our kids learning ABC before the school.
Well said. Very well said. And I think that's exactly right what you said, of course, that the military, well, firstly, as you pointed out, is obligated under international law to care for the civilian needs of the occupied population. But their military directive, the directive of the State of Israel, the project of the state, is not to care for the civilian needs of Palestinians under occupation. It is to displace Palestinians from especially rural communities to the cities and establish what they claim will be more manageable cantons in the military logic. So they deny Palestinian communities, as you well know, electricity, water, infrastructure, roads, building permits. All of these civilian infrastructure and administrations are denied because the intent, it's not a body that's accountable to Palestinians. The people have no democratic representation in this military government, and the government is in fact invested in making life unlivable for them. And I think it's really hard for people to truly understand the magnitude of what that means. Were you about to say something more?
Yeah, just to show you the discrimination of using water as a discrimination tool. You can find Israeli settlement has 24 hours, 7 days a week water running, and next door, just 100 meter, Palestinian houses, they receive water once a week or 2 hours a week. This is, in my opinion, pure discrimination and apartheid system. Regardless the discussion who owns the water, who control the water, but as a human beings, both sides they have drinking water rights, and they have the water, the available water should be distributed just between the two nations, and to keep the political argument about the ownership of the water going on. But for time being, everyone in that areas in Palestine and in Israel, in West Bank and in Gaza, they have the right to drink clean enough water as a basic human right, not only political right.
Yes. I work particularly closely, and the Green Olive Collective works particularly closely in Masafiriata in the South
Yes.
Hebron Hills. So I'm most familiar with the circumstance there. But in a village, for example, like Al Khair, directly beside the settlement of Carmel, they have access to water, as you said, 1 day a week or for 5 hours, 7 hours a week. But the tanks that the army lets them use to store water, they fill up within 1 hour. So effectively, they have 1 hour of water access per week. It's just unfathomable. So I want to open it up to the wider audience of people who's come together today to discuss these issues. If you have a question, please write it in the chat or raise your hand. Write question and then it in the chat so I can see it, and I'll try to integrate it. In the meantime, I saw, and as people raise their hands and write questions in the chat, I saw one question already in the chat from Janet Halbert, who asked if you could share more about the specific village you live in and how you're impacted by these issues. If you want to share more about the specific situation of the community you're part of.
Yes, many villages they have water shortage, and next to my village there is a village called Karawat Bani Zaid, because they are actually they are in the mountains. Most of the houses they never received water, and the rest of the houses, which is lower place, they receive water once a week, 2 hours or 3 hours, and they store water in the storage tanks, as I mentioned earlier. And around 120 villages of Palestinian communities, they don't receive water 24 hours a day. Only they receive 2 days or 3 days. And even in the cities, in Ramallah, we receive water 2 days a week. And most of all of the houses actually, they reuse they use the storage tanks, as I said earlier.
Thank you. Janet asked in the chat what region of the West Bank your community is in. Is it in the north, in the south?
I'm in Ramallah area in the center.
Thank you. Jenny Derbyshire, I'm sorry if I've mispronounced your name. You have a question about water management in Area A. I'll ask you to unmute now. If you're there, feel free to ask your question yourself. If you're able to unmute. Otherwise, in a moment, I'll ask it on your behalf. Are you there, Jenny?
Yes, but in Area A, there is no water resources. The Palestinian Authority manage the supply, pipes, reservoirs, storage tanks, but the resources, most of it in Area C and under Israeli control. What the Palestinian Authority does, only they regulate how to distribute water among citizens, but they don't control the resources. This is like you manage your business, but I control your bank account.
Right, which we see on many fronts. For example, also in the schools, the teachers now are not receiving their salaries in the West Bank because Israel controls the purse strings. You called the PA, you referenced it earlier with the term a subcontractor, which I think is important for people to understand.
Since 3 years, the Palestinian employees, they didn't receive the full salary, only 40%, 30%, because the Israelis, they, let me say, hijacked the money which is collected from the taxes.
Right. And of course, under the terms of Oslo, Israeli military forces are not permitted to enter Area A under any circumstances. And as we've seen in these last years, there have been very large-scale, devastating military operations. So the terms of Oslo also are not being respected in many senses.
Oslo, you know how they spell Oslo. Capital O-S-L-O. Oslo is starting with the big zero and end with the small zero. And since 30 years, we are running between two zeros.
Also well said. You have a wonderful way with words. I see there's other questions here, so I'll give others a chance to speak. Robert, if you're here and able to share your thoughts, I'll ask you to unmute now. Are you there and able to share your question?
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, many thanks first to Mr. Tamimi for your presentation. I would have a question, and I'm very much aware that you have been orienting yourself towards water and politics. I would still be interested to hear you as an engineer and a water specialist. And I think what you've been saying has been very much highlighting the importance of mobilizing advocacy work, and there's really work to be done on the political side. I'd like to hear you on how communities on a day-to-day basis try to cope. In addition to storing water, we hear of stories of wells being access to wells being denied, wells being poisoned by settlers. We hear about, usually from what I know, rainwater catchment projects. Can you maybe comment on this last area? Is there potential there? While working, of course, on the bigger picture, on the political aspects, to find viable solutions for communities to cope.
Yes, actually, the water harvesting from the roof of houses is very common in the rural areas of West Bank. Maybe 80% of the Palestinian villages, they are actually collecting rainwater, and this is enough for the whole summer. They're collecting 100 cubic meter in a storage tank. We call it cisterns or storage reservoir, but this is very common. The second resources used to be the natural springs. Most of the Palestinian villages, they used to rely on natural springs. Unfortunately, the last 5 years, the Israelis, they controlled the major springs and they didn't allow to Palestinians to use that water. And nowadays, the only, let me say, independent source and source controlled by Palestinians is the rainwater harvesting. And we are lucky the Israelis they cannot catch the water from the sky. That's why we can benefit from that water. Very little villages they depending on springs inside the villages, but this is very little water, and also they enjoy the 2 hours permitted by Israelis to have running water.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Robert. I think it also potentially leads into, because we don't have time to garner all of Dr. Tamimi's wisdom and thoughts and all that we have to learn from him. Someone asked in the chat, have you written a book about your work, or do you contribute to any online support groups, organizations with any updates? Where can people where can people learn more? Where can people connect with you or other important work happening?
Actually, myself, I wrote 3 books about water, but unfortunate in Arabic. But if you Google my name, you can find a lot of articles. However, I can put here in the chat box, I can put our website. You can find a lot of information in our website as organization.
That's the Palestine Hydrology Group?
Yes.
Great.
I put in the chat box the website.
Wonderful.
And also I can put my email. Anyone needs further information or scientific articles, it's my pleasure to send it to him.
Thank you for being so generous with your time. We're nearing the end of our time, unfortunately. I see there's 1 or 2 questions from the chat people have asked. I also, for myself, I had never heard before what you said earlier, that the route of the apartheid wall was planned, as you can see it, significantly in order to establish control over water resources. I've never heard anyone say that. That's how you understand.
I wrote an scientific article published in Water and Environment Journal in UK. I can forward to you and this is very wonderful article about the philosophy of the wall, because the wall the Israelis claim is for security, but nothing to do with the security, because the rockets came from Iran to Tel Aviv. What the wall can done, and in my opinion, it is no sense in that argument. Is the wall for security reason? Because nothing to do with the security, but the wall is a mechanism to control groundwater and to hijack Palestinian wells behind the wall.
Important.
But I can send. You have my email. Anyone can send an email to me, and I will forward a lot of articles written by me and by other colleagues about water and let me say water and politics.
Thank you so much. If you send them also tomorrow, I'll include them along with the recording of this wonderful discussion to everyone here, so they can be.
I will send the presentation very soon to you.
Shukran. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I guess I want to end just by asking you any thoughts about what's most important for people around the world to communicate to their communities about the general reality on the ground in the West Bank and Palestine, and specifically about water, perhaps, but what's the importance of solidarity and international advocacy and support?
I want to conclude with 1 sentence, and this sentence can be a slogan for anyone who promoting for peace. There is hundred of reasons to do war in the Middle East, but one of the major reasons to do peace is water cooperation.
Shara, thank you for all the work you've done, and thanks to everyone here for joining together today as we collectively, and following the leadership of people and with expertise like yourself, create paths forward for everyone's fundamental right to be respected.
Thank you.
So with that, thanks for your time, and thanks to everyone here on behalf of the Green Olive Collective for joining this event from around the world. Were you about to say something more, Dr. Tamimi?
Thank you very much for coming on and listening to the Middle East problems. But Middle East, like sand dunes, movable, and no one can understand where is the final destination.
Hopefully towards justice, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah.
So as I mentioned at the start of our time, any contributions for today's event would be much appreciated in order to really support on the ground efforts with Palestinian communities in the West Bank to resist forced transfer, displacement, and military occupation. The contributions will sustain grassroots initiatives like rebuilding honeybee farms that have been destroyed in settler attacks, replanting olive trees that have been damaged, rebuilding homes after demolitions, community gardens, and cultivating land threatened with expropriation. All of you are also invited to join the Green Olive Solidarity Network in this time of ongoing anguish. It is often difficult to know what we can do to support and express our solidarity. That is why we launched this advocacy and mutual aid network that allows people around the world to maintain direct contact and connections with incredible human rights defenders like Dr. Tamimi and many others. And lastly, of course, anyone who wants to join on the ground and meet in person with incredible advocates like Dr. Tamimi and in many other communities, of course, reach out to the Green Olive Collective, and we'll be happy to host you on a tour or a volunteer initiative. With that, thank you so much, everyone. Have good and quiet days, and we send all of our support to all of you around the world calling for justice. We'll see you in upcoming events and hope to be in touch with you, Dr. Tamimi. Have a good night. Have quiet days, everyone.